Charlie Lutz would sometimes tell the story of how we managed to make the moon a dead planet because we destroyed its atmosphere, and then we came to the Earth, shipload after shipload, and became known as the Gray People, and moved out to the forefront of civilization. And this was during the third root race of Atlantis, which would be, I think, the Red Race, and have remained in the forefront of civilization ever since. And so I deduced from that, with the help of my own past life recall of being involved with the breakup of Maldek, which now is just an asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, I suspect we came to the moon first, and then we came to the Earth. But having destroyed a planet, it seems like we were hell-bent on destroying the moon as well. So what the point of this video is, that's the backdrop, is I think I've come up with a solution, a technical detail, on how we managed to destroy the atmosphere of the moon. What I'm discovering is that silver hydroperoxide is a very interesting compound. I think I've mentioned before that it's surcharged with an electrical charge based on what oxidizer we have used to react with the nano silver, the colloidal nano silver. If we had used ozone, it would impart a positive voltage because the silver is acting like a capacitor plate. The water's the dielectric, which is holding the charge, and the silver merely helps with the orientation of the charge, but the dielectric always holds the charge. But you have to have the right balance, and the particles have to be the right size, because if they're not, when you add the hydrogen peroxide, you don't get a nice sustained charge. You lose the charge. For instance, if you put too much silver in the water, the particles become too large, and they can't hold on to the charge, and it's milky white. But if it's clear, then you're all right. But then if you want to maximize the charge, but you on the one hand, but you still want it to remain clear on the other. Well, hydrogen peroxide carries a negative charge. Ozone carries a positive charge. They're both oxidizers, and they both will, I suspect, react with silver, or any metal for that matter. We know hydrogen peroxide does. It's highly reactive with metal. So, if you spray the atmosphere with nano-sized particles of metal, and we know there's ozone up there in the stratosphere to protect us from cosmic rays, they are claiming now they're protecting us. It's a lie. They always lie. They're trying to kill us. They're trying to destroy the ozone hole. And it's not the CCFRs or whatever that President Al Gore was stumping about. It's the nano-sized particles of metal. Think about it. All the time, every time we apply the brakes, we put out nano-sized particles of metal into the atmosphere. And that's just us braking during driving. That's not all the other contributing factors that can put nano-sized particles of metal in the air before we even get to the subject of chemtrails, which is getting into it wholesale. So somebody must have figured out, based on metallic nano pollution, how to destroy ozone. You get nano-sized particles of metal and you combine it with the ozone, and a big reaction takes place, and you've just destroyed the ozone. Or the hydrogen peroxide, but in this case, the topic is on ozone, what I've learned from hydrogen peroxide reacting with nano silver. So, what they do is they spray the lower atmosphere. And we know from analysis that they only do it when the humidity is low, but the humidity drops further because it causes precipitation in what otherwise could not occur. And it draws the moisture away from ground level to the upper atmosphere. And literally, leaks the air of moisture. It leaks ground level atmosphere of moisture, and so they can create a drought just by spraying continually and then all of a sudden stopping. And now you've got no cloud cover at all, and the sun, and now you've got a drought condition, and of course everything else that goes with it if it's done at the right time of the year or whatever. Forest fires, whatever. But where does the metal go? We just assume it falls to the earth. Well, you know what? According to Dr. Judy Wood, when she analyzed 9/11, it didn't go down, it went up. In fact, the dustification process of the Twin Towers was such that it continued to dustify. The particles got smaller and smaller as the cloud came down and then went out at ground level. It then started to go up, and it wasn't because it hit an updraft, an upwelling of warm air. It simply went up because it was lighter than air. It levitated. It went up. Its buoyancy was such that it was lighter than air. So, if this should happen to the nano-sized particles that they're spraying in the atmosphere or to any other source of metallic pollution, that's going to make an ozone hole. Actually, it's going to weaken the ozone everywhere, but wherever the ozone is the thinnest is where the hole is going to begin to form and possibly grow further if it continues to get eaten up. So, this is how to destroy the atmosphere. You start with the ozone. You would think, right? It's a beginning, baby steps. But literally, we can destroy this atmosphere and cause this Earth to become dead, which means you could only survive if you were underground. And that's why they've been tunneling for decades, non-stop. And they pick up the pace because they want to kill off all life on the surface of this planet. And they will be the only survivors. And if you have to live in a tunnel, you know what that's really good for is dictatorship. Because, hey, you don't like it? You want to go outside? Walk the plank. And then we get the full scope of Admiralty law, where the captain is the ultimate authority figure, because he makes you walk the plank if he doesn't approve of you. Oh, no, don't get the captain upset. And you can't mute. Well, you could. See, then that would be the other thing. It would encourage mutiny on the Bounty, mutiny on the house seas, because that's the only alternative to dictatorship is all-out mutiny. Revolution. Well, mutiny in this case. So anyway, those are the sociological implications of destroying the atmosphere. So yeah, the moon's a dead planet, but it doesn't mean it has become depopulated. Absolutely, just relativistically. So, yeah, duh. But there's still some survivors. They went underground. Where else would they, But the majority came here. But where else? We keep destroying planets. This can't keep happening. We can't keep doing this. Just because we elect not to destroy a planet, destroying its atmosphere is not an alternative option. It's not an option, It's not workable. Yet this is how we do it. By chemtrail spraying, we will destroy the atmosphere. Now, what's the link? Well, when you destroy the ozone, life dies. Plants can't survive ultraviolet burning. Some more than others. Algae in particular. So you'll end up with no life forms on this planet. No plants and no animals. Without oxygen... Wait, let me think. With UV radiation, you would think... See, ozone is created because oxygen reacts to UV, because it's strong enough above the ozone, or at the ozone, that it reheals. It heals itself. So long as you've got oxygen, you'll get the formation of ozone. So apparently we put up so much metallic particles, nano-sized particles of metal in the atmosphere, that it doesn't go away. It doesn't rain out of the atmosphere. It stays there because it's above the cloud level. Duh. So you get enough sustained and you don't recover. It's a one-way ticket to the destruction of the ozone, unless you can get the metal out of the air at the upper atmosphere level. Good luck. I don't know how you do that. In the meantime, with the destruction of the ozone, that doesn't get rid of the oxygen, though, directly. It just gets rid of all life on this planet. So, what happens? See, they say oxygen is formed on the inside of the planet and adds to the oxygen content of the air. Yet, there has to be less oxygen because... Oh no, we know this. We know the oxygen levels have been depleting. So where did it go? Where did it go? Maybe the ozone does more than protect us from UV radiation. Maybe it prevents oxygen from leaking out into space. Because ozone is a heavy molecule, and you've created an inversion layer. And whenever we get an inversion layer, it's a capstone. It's a plug. That's why we get smog, because we have an inversion layer where we have hot air above... cold air. We have cold air above warm air. And that's what an inversion layer is, because normally hot air rises. Well, hot air is less dense and wants to rise. It has greater buoyancy. But ozone is heavier than normal oxygen because of the extra oxygen atom. And so that's literally an inversion layer in caps. So that's it. You lose your oxygen if you lose your inversion layer. And which we're doing already. That's why our oxygen is less. It's going out into space through the ozone holes. Okay? So if we lose all our oxygen, and the atmosphere becomes imbued with metallic particles of metal, we'll never heal the ozone hole, or the lack of an ozone across the entire stratosphere. And we'll never accumulate oxygen. You'll just keep going out into space. So even the moon may be still creating oxygen for all we know, but it can't accumulate it. It's at its threshold point at which it simply loses it immediately. Right? Because it's no different than being in space on the surface of the moon. Alright. So that's how you destroy an atmosphere, is simply destroy its ozone layer by putting out nanometal into the atmosphere. And all you have to do is keep spraying and it'll accumulate. Now you would think it would aggregate. Silver will. But that's not to say that other metals will. Especially if it's a mix. And that might be why we have the choice of metals that we have in the mix that we have. Aluminum, titanium, barium, magnesium. Magnesium is hygroscopic as it is, and will draw moisture to itself. So not only are we losing oxygen, but we're losing water as well. And water has an adhering quality. What do they call it? Surface tension. It wants to adhere to metal. Ooh, that's right. So the metal particles are going to adhere to water, but the metal is also going to want to react with the ozone. Let's see. But not... What does water do to this situation? So magnesium draws the water to the metal, acting like a magnet, so that when the metal unites with the water, it'll create hydrogen peroxide, which is the opposite charge to ozone. Hydrogen peroxide is negative. Ozone is positive. And you accelerate the destruction of the ozone. Oh, that's uncanny. So the magnesium, in combination with the metal, accelerates the destruction of ozone. Holy shit. Okay. So that's the purpose of magnesium in the water. But why aluminum, titanium, and barium? Don't they use barium in enemas before they do an inspection of your colon for a reason? Isn't barium hygroscopic? So it's another hygroscopic. No, it gives you diarrhea. Oh my God, what if barium... Oh my God, what if barium is what the dustification process is in a chemical form? Namely, I wonder if they put barium in concrete. Because if you have barium present, it may be that that's what causes the particles to keep getting smaller and smaller and stay practically atomic or atomic, so that they never want to aggregate into larger sized particles. So now we've got a perfect situation. All we have to do is keep spraying this mix. So what's the titanium good for? Well, titanium actually blocks UV radiation. Because if you had UV radiation, you would you would heal the ozone. So there's the reason for the 4 ingredients. They don't want it to heal, and they want it to get worse, and they want it to accelerate, and they want to be the so that's the purpose of chemtrails, is to destroy the atmosphere so that they can have a dictatorship underground. How nice. How nice. I wonder if that's what's happened on the interior of the planet. Charlie Lutz didn't like it that I posed a question to him on paper when he was taking questions. He never liked me to pose questions. He just wanted me to receive what he wanted to give me because it was germane to what was in my best interest. And one time I put on a question twice. One time he simply stopped taking questions when he saw my question, I believe. But the other time he did answer it, and very reluctantly. It had to do with this storyline that the Earth is hollow and what's going on. And so what he said was, it's true they left the surface of the planet at one time because we were so warlike, but they became very gross or something like that. And then to prevent them from mixing with us, or us with them, the holes at the poles were sealed. So what I'm beginning to wonder is if possibly they went underground and that's pretty gross. Charlie said, don't build your homes underground. It's not healthy, it's not right. So what if that's the way to become gross, is to become subterranean? And, if that's your way of insisting on being a dictator, is to kill off everybody on the surface of the planet and say you've got to live underground with the rest of us survivors, then that's pretty gross. You never see the light of day. You never have any light other than artificial light, and it promotes this idea that the only way to live is with a hierarchy and absolute control. Good grief. I have another rash to treat with silver hydroperoxide. Okay. It's itching. So this silver hydroperoxide has been... See, literally, they don't want silver to become popular because then people would figure out. Or even hydrogen peroxide for that matter. Somebody would figure out what chemtrail spraying is all about. Hello? And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So... interesting. Yeah, no kidding. Oh, brother. Well, I don't know what more to say. That sounds pretty ugly. I obviously don't have any solutions, because rainmaking, what's that good for? That's just good for the lower atmosphere. This is something up in the stratosphere. How do you solve that? Do you use etheric weather engineering for that? Can it really address something that high up? Trevor Constable never talked about it. He never dealt with it. He just strictly dealt with rain. I mean, this is something beyond Trevor Constable. So I don't have an answer. I don't know. You have to get the barium out of the air, for one thing. You have to clean the... If you clean the air of barium, the rest would follow suit. I think that's the linchpin, so to speak. The weak hinge in this is the barium. So if you can get the barium out, that might help. Or the water, well, the magnesium, possibly. So what's the aluminum there for? So we covered titanium blocks UV, magnesium is hygroscopic, and barium is dustifying. So what does the aluminum do? Help us not pay attention? I suspect silver hydroperoxide clarifies the brain of aluminum. Why would that be? Because silver hydroperoxide is a negatively charged metallic capacitor, or imparts it to the water at any rate, and causes the body to become negatively charged. So what does that have to do with aluminum? Is that how you remove aluminum from the body, is by giving it a negative charge, and it wants to aggregate with what? Or it wants to form, what did that guy call it, Louis Kervran? Biologically transmute the production of silica, which will then bind with aluminum. Because silica binds with aluminum. But only if the physiology is healthy, and apparently it's a negative charge that's needed. Now, yeah, but if water uniting with these metallic particles creates imparts a negative, well, not necessarily. Wait a minute. Yeah, hydrogen peroxide is not that easy to create. Oh, brother. Whoops. Yeah, hydrogen peroxide is not that easy to create. So we're not really accelerating. So what purpose is the water then? It may just be an exacerbating element to make life on the surface of the planet more painful and difficult. I don't know, and it doesn't explain what the purpose of the aluminum is for. Well, aluminum carries an electrostatic charge very readily. So they want the mix to be charged with electricity. But what charge would it be? To destroy the ozone, it would have to be negative. Yeah, I don't know. Is that another way to make hydrogen peroxide? I don't know. Well, obviously I don't have the whole thing settled, but got a lot of loose ends there that are pretty interesting. So, anywho, that's the point of this video, is the purpose of chemtrails is to destroy the atmosphere. and create a dictatorship underground. That, you know, and I don't have all the details in place to make it convincing, but it sure does look that way. So what more can I say? Doesn't sound good. Nor does it really give us any answer about how to prevent it or undermine that activity. Well, if silver hydroperoxide imparts a negative charge to the fluid of the body, giving it good health, such that biological transmutations can happen spontaneously, we'd have to say the same thing about the atmosphere. And so Trevor Constable's rainmaking does apply somehow, but only to the lower atmosphere. You still got to heal the upper atmosphere where all this damage is taking place. And lightning goes between the cloud mass and Earth, so everything above the cloud mass is not being electrically healed, necessarily. Now, I would suspect that the aurora borealis, which happens at the pole, or at the North Pole, is supposed to heal the ozone. So actually, beaming microwaves at the, well, but they say that pushes up the ozone. That doesn't sound very good. So maybe not micro... No, that wouldn't, yeah. Well, you'd have to... Isn't there a way to send an electron beam? Don't they do that with certain lasers? Or deployment lasers? They send a stream of ions. If you could send a stream of negatively charged ions, that would heal the upper atmosphere, but how would you send them? How would you propel them forward, you know, against the flow of gravity and all the pollution that's in the way? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just don't know. They spray above the cloud level. I've seen it. I've been in an airline, and they were spraying. There was a sprayer right at our level, and we were above the cloud level. So it's not like they spray below. They spray above. Yeah, because they want to eliminate those clouds, for one thing. So there's no... I don't know. Dang. This does not sound good. Sorry to give you bad news. The solution to all of this is really quite simple. It's churning the ether with cones that attract the ether and then churn it to create a breakup of the ether, a movement of the ether that creates a negative charge in the physical plane. So it has consequences in the physical plane. And that's what I do here. I create a negative charge right beneath me because I have cones of light coming off of those convex mirrors that I have attached to both the underside and the top side of the blades of that ceiling fan. I have it running all the time in a counterclockwise direction. I don't know if you can see that, but I think my cell phone is showing me the reverse image, but it's counterclockwise. I'm in the northern hemisphere. Probably should be the opposite in the southern hemisphere. And I'm over land. At any rate, that's the solution to chemtrails. It's the best I can do, and it's as bad as I make it out to be and sound. there is a way around it, and it's something we can all contribute to try to heal the planet and bring back, undermine their prerogative, which is to destroy the atmosphere, is to heal it. And so that's how. That's how we do it. Or if you prefer, a close-up. A nice, juicy close-up.